What's going on, guys? It's Fantasy Stock Exchange here, bringing you the 8th installment of our ADP Battle series. We're actually going to be splitting the series up into two episodes per week, so one versus battle per segment. Nick, you're the debutant of this new influx of the series. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Just ready to break some guys down. Are you ready?
I was born ready.
All right. Before we do that, let's hit the intro.
Are you ready, Jerry?
I'm ready.
Just want to make sure you're ready, brother. Show me the money. Yo, show me the money!
It's unbelievable the condition of both men, but the Russian
I must break you.
Okay, so we are back. So for today's 8th installment, we're actually going to be going through two highly sought after receivers in this year's redraft. And we're actually going to go through A.J. Brown versus Adam Thielen. So with A.J. Brown, he's currently got an ADP of wide receiver 15, the 409 off the board, whereas Adam Thielen is going off as the wide receiver 16 or the 410 off the board. Now, you see, we're actually both in agreement here. We both like that number 19 from Minnesota, Kirk Cousins' boy, Adam Thielen. So to start off, I mean, again, this is a lean for me in terms of volume. I think that you're going to be mentioning the same thing. But I just wanted to address the elephant in the room. We all know why Thielen is even available at this point, because typically if he played all of last season, he would have a much higher ADP. But we know he missed a big chunk of last season. The hamstring strain really inhibited him last year, cut his value. And let's be honest here, the fantasy community, as soon as somebody gets injured, they kind of go forgotten in terms of the ADP. So just to break it down, especially if you're older like Thielen for the record, but just to break down, he's a top 12 wide receiver value. We know this. He should be going in the third round, but instead he's fallen to the late fourth, and that is just incredible value, especially 410. You're telling me you could start with a Zeke in the first round, maybe get another running back at the end of the turn, and then you could pair up like a Thielen and like a DJ Moore. Like, I'm all the way in on that. But just breaking down the last healthy season that we saw from Thielen in 2018, when he played all 16, 153 targets, 113 receptions, 1,373 receiving yards, and 9 receiving touchdowns. That is elite. And if you guys were watching that season, again, it seemed like the first 8 or 9 weeks, I believe, he caught a touchdown pass. He was the number 1 receiver in fantasy. That is the Adam Thielen that I can honestly believe that he can get back to. So what are your first thoughts on the Thielen versus Brown debate?
Well, my first thought was, honestly, when I was thinking about it is, like you said, why is Adam Thielen so low? He's a guy that just last year was getting drafted much higher. Some people thought he had top 5 potential. Same thing goes with guys like Juju. And then they end up getting hurt. And then they completely fall off the cliff for most people because they think, oh, he had a bad year because of this. When in reality, before he was hurt, the guy was doing actually pretty good. He was averaging 13.53 half PPR points per game and 15.46 PPR points per game. So he was very good. And then the thing with A.J. Brown is I'm not really sure about A.J. Brown. It's very hard to figure out what I think is going to happen because I know that both of these teams were playing with wide receivers that are going to be very run heavy, but how confident am I that A.J. Brown is the true number 1 guy on that team? Because as we all know, as everyone hates Corey Davis, but it could eventually be that Corey Davis actually gets targets, and that's really going to hurt A.J. Brown. So I think that it's just much safer to think that Adam Thielen is going to be better, and I just think to me, it's just way more clear with, like you said at the beginning of the video, said it's Kirk Cousins' guy. Him and Adam Thielen are boys. Kirk Cousins, it seemed like he hated Stefon Diggs, and obviously now with Stefon Diggs gone, maybe now is really the time we see Adam Thielen finish super high. I mean, like you said, he's wide receiver number 8 in points per game in 2018. He was, for the first couple of weeks, the number 1 guy, and then he kind of fell off, but his fall off was still a top 12 guy pretty much every single week. So I think we see Adam Thielen really outscore A.J. Brown. In my rankings, I don't even have them close, to be honest with you.
For sure. I'll mention my rankings after as well. But you mentioned, like, the Titans, they still have Jonnu Smith is one of our favorites on the channel. They're still depending on Derrick Henry. I mean, his efficiency is going to need to be kind of at par to produce at last year's level. I'll bring that up again later. But touching upon this right now, you mentioned Stefon Diggs. Even though Kirk Cousins didn't like him, including himself and other smaller departed receivers, 110 vacated targets, 1,300 vacated receiving yards, and 7 vacated receiving touchdowns. Now, you're going to mention, oh, well, they drafted Justin Jefferson. They added Tajay Sharp in free agency. I love Justin Jefferson. he's not going to be filling that Diggs void. And Tajay Sharp is just another guy, in my opinion. So overall, if you're looking at that, how are they going to supplement that loss of production? In my opinion, it's going to go to Kirk Cousins' guy, as we mentioned. It's going to go to Adam Thielen. We've seen that connection really stand true in 2017 and 2018 after Thielen broke out. So, I mean, if we're going to go off the small sample size, I mean, it's not much to project, but it's all we really have at this current point. Adam Thielen has played 3 career games without Stefon Diggs. I mean, I didn't really take in the full fantasy points per game from it. The main consideration I took from this was that his overall target volume increased heavily. So he went from 8.05 targets per game with Stefon Diggs to 10.67 without, a massive increase when projected across the season. That difference would be 129 target pace over 16 versus 171 target pace over 16. So, I mean, we mentioned that. We mentioned the situation. We mentioned the surrounding. People are going to say, well, the Vikings are a big run-first, run-heavy team. Well, they were last year, guys. I mean, 49% run split last year, tied for second in the league with the San Francisco 49ers, only behind the Baltimore Ravens. So, I mean, overall, we're going to expect them to run the ball. We know that that's what they want to do on offense. When Dalvin Cook is healthy, when Alex Madison is, even if Dalvin Cook's not healthy, they want to run the ball. Ultimately here, there's going to be more than enough volume for Adam Thielen to get back on his value of being a top 10 receiver. So, overall, his combination of ceiling, floor ultimately gives them the edge. But we mentioned the ceiling that A.J. Brown possesses. It's just the floor for me that really makes me hesitant. As you mentioned, Adam Thielen, I believe, is my wide receiver 10 right now in terms of redraft. Brown, I had to be a little more cautious with. He's going off as the 15. I currently have him as the 18 simply because we don't know how he's going to project. How is the volume going to go? Is he going to keep that efficiency? Because overall, I think he's a very efficient receiver. I think he's a very talented receiver. But is he a historically dominant receiver? Because that's what his rookie season really pointed to. Overall, trying to project Brown, I have discomfort. I have kind of anxiety trying to give him a true target total. And when I have that, I mean, his floor is just not there if you're not able to do that. But again, these guys both possess top 8 ceilings. Give me the guy with a top 12, 13 floor in conjunction with that. So what else are your thoughts on Brown? Because I think we pretty much covered all the bases here.
Yeah, like you said earlier about Jonnu Smith, like me and you both clearly believe that Jonnu Smith is going to be very good. So if you think Jonnu Smith is going to do good, and if you think Corey Davis even takes any bit of an uptick, because, I mean, the guy's going to get cut if he doesn't get up there. He's going to leave the team. So he has to eventually work out if he wants to keep that job. So you would think that A.J. Brown might take a slight dip. And with the team that is so run heavy, you know they're going to run the ball. Like, at least with the Vikings, they'll dump it off to Dalvin Cook. They'll do these plays to make it so that Adam Thielen can get the ball and all the other guys. But I'm just a bit worried about how alpha is A.J. Brown. Is he really the alpha guy that maybe he looked like he was last year? I mean, one thing that I bring up that while there's no real stats to base this around, Ryan Tannehill and A.J. Brown were both on the second team in practice together, right? Because A.J. Brown wasn't really that guy for the beginning of the season until Ryan Tannehill was there. So maybe we see these other guys get involved now due to the fact that they're all practicing on the first team together, because maybe it would just take a bunch of weeks of chemistry to figure it out, and that's what we would see through training camp. But with all this training camp confusion, it makes it even more confusing for A.J. Brown. So I'm just going to stick with my take earlier, like we both said. I just think Adam Thielen is super safe. The guy was averaging just 5.71 targets last year, and you said his average was like 8 or 10. I think his average might be 11 or 12 this year. The guy's going to be a fucking target machine, and he also is a touchdown machine. The guy scores a crazy amount of touchdowns every single year. Last year, his numbers were literally skyrocketing because he was one of the top, I think it was top 20 in touchdowns. So
yeah, I mean, he had 6 receiving touchdowns in only 10 games played, and even with those 10 games played, he played hobbled in a few of those. I still remember he caught like a 51-yard touchdown, I believe. I think that was like week 7 or 8. I had him in my lineup. He got hurt while catching that touchdown, missed the rest of the game. That just shows you catches one pass in the game, goes for a touchdown, then gets hurt in that game, and nobody else really, nobody else in the fantasy community, well, there's probably people, but really value that. I mean, he was still playing well, even though maybe the receiving yards were a little bit down. But again, as I mentioned, he was playing hobbled overall. And the beginning of the season, they just weren't at the same passing level that they ultimately finished out. I mean, we all had the same complaints with Kirk Cousins. Oh, he's not getting his receivers the ball, yada, yada, yada. And then second half of the season, he actually really picked it up. So overall, I have a lot more safety. I feel a lot more easy when I take Thielen. Whereas, don't get me wrong, Brown has league-winning type upside if he hits. But there's so many question marks to the point where if these two guys are facing me on my board about to draft, back-to-back, I'm taking Thielen, and it's not really close for me. But yeah, overall, this is the first part of our ADP Battles, episode 8. We'll call it episode 9 for the Wednesday show, but it's basically the same episode. We're just making it a lot more easy to digest for you guys. Single little segments 2 times a week, giving you more of that content that you guys really love. You guys have really been supporting this ADP Battles series, but I'm not sure if I mentioned it in all this video, but if you're liking what you're seeing, go like, comment down below. Go subscribe to us and Notorious Fantasy. We'll have them linked in the description. But until then, that'll be the ADP segment for this week. So anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
No, nothing much. Just make sure you don't draft A.J. Brown ahead of Adam Thielen.
There you go.
And that's.
Peace out.